my name's Elijah, and welcome to my podcast, Songwriting for Songwriters. Joining me today is producer Youth. Youth's influence and impact on music is far-reaching and almost unparalleled. As a member of Killing Joke, The Orb and the Fireman with Paul McCartney, he has created works of sonic mastery, and as a producer his influence is massive, working with commercially successful bands such as the Verve, Primal Scream, Crowded House and many others. And as a pioneer and curator of music, he's been responsible for masses of ambient and electronic masterpieces with plenty of dub to go with it. He's a fascinating dude, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening. Okay, joining me today on my Songwriting for Songwriters podcast is Youth. How you doing?
Hi.
Hiya.
Good. Yeah.
Thanks for coming, mate. You've got a beautiful room behind you there with loads of books and CDs. Is that your studio?
Yeah, study.
Wicked, mate. Awesome. So what are you currently working on? Are you being creative right now?
I always try and be creative, yeah. If I'm not doing music, I'm painting, drawing, writing, all kinds of things, lino cuts. So at the moment I'm doing quite a lot of painting. I'm doing a fair bit of music. I'm getting composing music for a new David Tibet album, meditation albums.
Okay.
Yeah, some projects I can't really talk about yet, but quite a lot of stuff.
Wicked.
Yeah.
So do you have
some songs as well? I'm writing quite a few songs at the moment, which I'm singing, which it may end up as a solo album, may end up as songs for other people.
Great. And do you find, like, obviously, because songwriting, and if you like with capital letters, songwriting is maybe different from sort of producing or writing other bits of music. When you're writing your own songs and singing, are you in a different kind of mindset to when you're writing music, or is it the same sort of zone that you're in?
For me, it's all about your intentions. So
yeah.
If I'm asked to just produce and not write, then I'll look at it from that perspective. If I'm asked to collaborate, co-write and produce, and I look at it from that perspective. If I happen to write something and then give it to an artist and then produce it, then that's a different mindset. They're all kind of different mindsets, really.
Yeah. And that's quite important, isn't it, to know what your role is, or what the artist wants you to do, or intention, because it gives you the sort of guidelines to kind of create in, I guess, does it?
Intentions are everything, really. Intentions are really important. Your own intentions, why you're doing it, what are you doing there 10 hours a day?
Yeah.
What's the point of that? Where's the meaning? Where's the purpose? That's a deeper conversation. But once you've got your intentions, so you can write them down, line them up, then focus on that, and then let the magic happen.
Love that. I think that's bloody good advice, actually, to remain in, because you're right, you can lose 10 hours, can't you? Or you can lose a week or a month or a year working on something. If you don't know what your intentions are, you're going to lose your time and your magic.
Yeah, and even with the best intentions, may not get anything. So
yeah. I read the other day that when you back in the day, you worked with Stott Aitken and Waterman for a while.
Yeah.
The way I think of you as a cultural figure and a producer, and I'm sure many people who wouldn't necessarily equate you to working with those guys, but I was really interested to know, like, how that impacted you as a musician and writer, and if it did at all, what you kind of learned.
Wow, it's a good question. In the 80s, I was quite a maverick because people accused me of being quite genre blind. And I go from the noise of Killing Joke to disco pop or whatever, dance music, which was unusual then. It's not unusual now,
no.
But then it was. Luckily, the world's moved towards me in that respect.
Yeah,
which has given me some longevity, I think. But at the end of the day, it's your work that gives you work. That's what counts. If the work's really good, you'll keep getting more work, I think, in that respect. But certainly with Stott Aitken Waterman, it was an unusual one. I left Killing Joke, started my own band, Brilliant, which had many members in over a few short years. And we were managed by Bill Drummond and David Balfe, who both became legends in their own right. But they both came together from the Liverpool days of Zoo Records and Zoo Publishing. David Balfe was the bass player in Teardrop Explodes. Bill Drummond was in Big in Japan. And they were big cornerstone of that Liverpool psychedelic post-punk experience, Bunnyman.
Yeah.
So much. And so it was good working with them. And they kind of battled with me with this sort of loose collective of musicians that had 2 drummers, 2 bass players, 2 keyboard players. I don't think I was quite clear about my intentions with that band, but I was happy just to experiment after being in a very rigid format with Killing Joke. And that's what we did. But we kind of ran out of steam, made our own album, and then that was rejected by our label, Warner's. And they gave us an ultimatum to either split the band down to 3-piece, me, Jimmy Cauty, and June, and Montana, and do an album with Stock Aitken Waterman. We liked the idea of that because we really loved Spin You Around Like a Record Baby, which was a huge record for me. It crossed the dance floor, indie, punk, everything.
Yeah.
And not many people could produce a sound like that in the UK at that time. So, I'd actually gone with one of Moroder's guys, so SP Held. I'd gone with one of Quincy Jones' guys to get that American sound. The keyboard player from the Blockheads, Chaz Jankel, produced a single for us. None of it had quite made the mark. But with these guys, I thought, well, let's have a go. I can see how they do it. And they had a really good way of working, of just getting into samplers. And they work really fast and write and record a track a day, It was weird, though, because this was before they became uber pop.
Yeah.
But, one of our backing singers stayed behind one day and they kept her in and got her to voice this backing track they'd done, which I wish they'd given to us, which was Say I'm Not Your Number One by Princess. And they really nailed it with that. That was a #1 record. And they were getting that BB&Q, SOS Band sound, Jam and Lewis sound. I was really into that at the time. But it wasn't quite right for us. And it was a bit odd for people getting their head around me coming from Killing Joke with this sort of shiny pop thing. And we were being quite satirical with it. I mean, this was for the basic foundations for the KLF. We were doing the dance routines. We were trying different ideas of videos. All that came to focus and fruition with the KLF later with Jimmy and Bill.
Yeah.
And what I kind of tangented it off and started the Orb with Alex, or encouraged Alex to start the Orb and started working with him radically on that. And then he was working with Jimmy. It was a big South London bohemian collective, really. So, but it was odd that Bill and Balfe were pushing me to work with these out-and-out pop producers like Kylie's producers. They hadn't done that then, but I thought that was odd because they come from a very artistic post-punk collective, but I realised they had huge grand ambitions themselves, which was later realised with Bill with the KLF and for Balfe with Food Records and signing Blur. I mean, I think Brilliant's record was the first record out on Food.
Wow.
But Brilliant itself, the album was a little disappointing with the charts. We got some good American dance stuff. Some of the songs were good, but it was really important for me, and Jimmy, watching how they worked as a team, really that fast, a track a day, and how they were fearless in just stealing stuff. And he would come in with these US import 12 inches and go, that's the bass line, put another one, those are the chords, put it together. And that was seminal, I thought. And I loved that. I thought it was really punk and it was really kind of Jamaican in a way. And speed of it was quite like that as well. And Motown, I mean, they were obsessed with Motown. But it could get into the bland and glib with them, which I almost got sacked from the band. They tried to get me sacked from the band because I was complaining about Mike was writing these like like really sentimental, soppy lyrics, and I'm like, we can't really have that. And luckily, June and Jimmy wouldn't have it. But I mean, they didn't want a maverick like me, screwing up their master plan.
Fascinating.
No, it did. It didn't really happen. But I learned so much after that. Me and Jimmy just went, "How?" We applied that philosophy to the writing of our own stuff, and me as a writer producer. And yeah, I mean, that going back to the question, like writing, producing is very thin, slim, slender line. Even the tape op has an impression on the work. Nevertheless, again, that comes back to intentions. You do what you're asked to do. Even if I'm just asked to produce, I might end writing a chorus or a middle eight. I won't ask for the publishing on that unless it's offered, because I was only asked to produce. A follow-up session, that might be a different thing. But initially, I'll just go with the intentions. And that stopped me getting cynical and bitter. And it also allows me to give 100% whatever I'm doing. I'm never hot bag. But if I'm invited in to write, then I'll really push for that as well. I think sometimes when I'm not writing, I can have a certain, a bit more of a vicious perspective on what's going on, which is good. Soon as you're writing, you're like, suddenly you're just listening to that word or that phrase and thinking, is that good enough? And, then you're the artist, and then your perspective goes out the window a bit. But you can manage that, and I've learned how to do that as well, but it's harder.
Yeah. I also read on an interview talking about like creating chaos in the studio, or also talking about renewal for an artist, and how one way of renewing yourself is to sort of destroy yourself and your point of view, which I think is fascinating, to be honest. And
Right. It is, yeah, but necessary sometimes. Absolutely.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
When you're working with people, sort of that idea of creating a bit of chaos. But I mean, you get it in bands, don't you? Anyway, or in, I don't know, any kind of partnership, there's going to be something like that. Do you find that is like a useful tool to create some conflict, and what it just gives it more edge? What is that kind of?
Yeah, I mean, generally there's enough conflict anyway.
Yeah.
But often there can be complacency. They could have had a lot of success. They could be tired. They could be burnt out. 100 things, and they could just be lazy. And my theory is that all great art has an intensity to it. So including music, and so you need an intensity in the studio because it's only going to reflect what's going on.
Yeah.
If it's too complacent, too easy, too nice, I'll provide some challenges, one way or another, to raise that bar up to the right intensity.
Will that be like in focusing? I mean, would that be like challenging like an artist or a performer directly to change what they're doing, or will it be more conceptual, sort of like, or a bit of both?
Bit of both. I mean, they may play me a song, I might go, I just like that 30 seconds. Let's just loop that 30 seconds and try and sing the song over that and jam over that. That could be shocking for an artist as well, but it can be really, it can be really great. I think there's so many roles in the production thing, like you've got to be like the ringmaster, the taskmaster, the therapist, all these things sometimes. And I'm happy to crack the whip where it's necessary. I'm known for being a challenging, tough producer. I've also known for working with challenging, tough artists. And artists that have a lot of disagreement, because I'm pretty good at bringing everyone together on the page. And I think it's inevitable, if you've got the right leadership, that will happen. Because it's like jury service. I don't know if you've ever done jury service. That was really learning experience for me. And you've got to get a unanimous decision. On my experience of it, it was only me and one girl who thought this kid was guilty. Everybody else, like, there's not enough evidence. And we decided, and as I came out of that first session, I said, what do you do? She said, I'm a student. I'm doing psychology. I was like, what's your thesis on? And she was like, oh, it's a psychology of juries. I said, oh, well, that's interesting. What happens? She said, well, normally everyone will come to a unanimous decision eventually. And it may start with 1 against 12, and then they will argue it, deliberate over days, and then everybody will agree. So I thought that really inspiring. I thought, well, you can push that threshold and get through. So we made a kind of an agreement to push that, and we ended up getting an unanimous agreement. And even though I'm not really in penal, uh, sort of penalties or punishment, the guy was actually turned out to be a really dangerous guy, and that was hanging on a thread, this case. So we made the right decision. Everybody was happy about it. But I think same in the studio, you can go through all the avenues of possibility, and eventually it will come to the definitive version. And that's what you're after, the definitive version. So I'm happy to crack that way. I'm happy to be tough. I can be really brutal and vicious, but I try and do it with a loving, kind way.
I love that. Yeah. That's great.
But again, that's my intention, but obviously that can be, the artists are very, very sensitive. And that can be too much for some artists, too confrontational. And I've had to curb my, procedures sometimes because of that. But I think sometimes they find that refreshing as well. I mean, I do when I'm with the producer. So, but it's a really tricky bag to unpack what that is.
Yeah. So what about the Fireman albums you made are incredible, and obviously it's you and Macca doing that, and he's been known. I mean, he's been known from books I've read or from things I've heard, sometimes for being quite particular about what he wants. So how do you find that creative relationship with him?
Well, I think with him, and also certain other artists of that stature, like with Gilmour, once you've earned their trust, and they allowed you to have this command, then they quite enjoy being treated like session musicians. Right, that one, let's give me a Phil Spector here, give me a Shadows, Hank Marvin, whatever. They will follow the direction, and then there's the point. Okay, I've got all I need. Have a break, cup of tea, a snack. I'll put it together. I'm doing an arrangement. They come in and go, "Wow, how did we get that?" And that's why they allow me to do that. I think because, and it's also fun as a musician, just being a musician as an artist, and not having to be the producer and look at the big picture and just play the bass, or just play some drums. What do you want now? Next, okay, I love that. So, I think. But that's actually an incredibly weird and difficult quest-like journey to get to the position where you've got Paul McCartney who trusts you enough, where you have enough provenance and kudos to go, this guy knows what he's talking about. I'll go with that. Because even with some of the best top producers in the world, as soon as they're in the room with him, they fall apart. And then he's like, who's this guy?
I guess that comes in a way, must come from you being a musician and performer first. Like you're in the same zone, aren't you? Like you and Paul, both bass players, you play,
right?
Common ground.
But I mean, as a dozen producers he's worked with like that, where it hasn't worked,
Right.
It's a weird one, it's magic. There's magic there. There's mystery and magic, and we're attempting to sort of unpack what that is. It's for every time that works, there's another time it won't work. So, like, even though there's no rules, even those rules doesn't work sometimes. There's no, you can't ever get to a complacent point where this is how I do it. And I mean, a lot of producers do. I mean, Stockwell, Aiken Waltman would do that, and then it's like my way or the highway. This is how I do it. That's it. You don't have a say as an artist. You just do what they tell you. But those records sound like that, and they don't always come off great for it either. So, I think my philosophy as a producer is to get the best out of the artist. It's not really I've never really had a youth sound. I go from so many different genres. So you put Crowded House next to Pink Floyd, next to The Orb, I mean, you would never know that they were made by the same person, except for there's a certain quality to them, or maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, this
and
is
it's quite rare with as well. You know, producers tend to have a sound,
yeah,
and that blows up and they become big for 3-5 years and then it's over.
Yeah.
So I kind of avoided that, and for my own journey, I've taken on the challenges of working with different kinds of music, where I do things differently. You know, at the moment, I'm doing a lot of 90s Britpop bands for Alan McGee. You know, and I tend to make a point of not. I'm not trying to sound like a Britpop band in the 90s when I'm doing that. Try and make them sound completely different. I mean, it still comes out like that at the end.
Yeah, well, it's like I spoke to Kyle Falconer actually a few weeks ago, and some of the tracks you've worked with them for the View, and it, you know, like you said, there's a Britpop element, but actually they just sounded bloody great. Those records that he.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to make sounds that date the band. You don't want to make sounds that make the band sound old-fashioned. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing ages so fast as a new sound. So you're trying to make timeless, beautiful music. So it's a combination of all that. Also, music has to be of its time. So it sound like it's today. Otherwise, that won't sound right either.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many elephant traps on the way down the pier to the cruise ship, you know, where you're doing karaoke. That, you know, so part of my job is to, you know, navigate the team and the artist around those, you know.
Really tell me about like one of the kind of most successful albums of all time, commercially speaking, but also I think in many ways, like sonically, is Urban Hymns by the Verve. And obviously they're a band who were like in some sort of conflict at the time you were working with them, but came together to kind of complete the album. What kind of what do you remember from those sessions?
Well, and I was commissioned to do a Richard Ashcroft solo album where he employed the band as session guys.
Right.
But all the way through, I'm going, this is the Verve, this is the Verve.
Yeah.
But finally, when he got Nick McCade in at the end, then it was the Verve.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a difficult album to make, but it was an amazing album, and sonically, and the arrangements and the performances are just beautiful. Yeah, and very successful. Yeah, one of my greatest albums I think I've been involved with. Yeah,
it still sounds great. I just happened to hear Bittersweet Symphony the other day, and the first opening 10 seconds, just there's, you know, obviously the string part, but just the surrounding ambient noises are just beautifully, you know, it doesn't sound dated, you know, and a lot of the stuff, you know.
I mean, a lot of those, Sonnet, Lucky Man, I mean, that's just, I think they're up there with some of the best records. And even though I'm saying that I'm involved, but
I agree.
When I hear them on the radio, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, they're huge. Yeah. So how often do you write yourself personally, like, or create every day? Is it an everyday thing for you, or is it as you feel it?
As I feel it, but most days, I mean, I don't like going through a day without having written a song or made a painting or drawing or something. If I'm not producing an artist, which I'm not doing that all the time. So yeah, every day, pretty much.
That's great. So Space Mountain, your studio in Spain, that sounds and looks like an incredible a place. Tell us about that. Is that a great place to work as well from outside of London?
Yeah. So for me, that's like an absolute bespoke creative environment I created in Spain. And, you know, I got about 100 acres there, wilderness, and just made this incredible recording facility based on Studio 2 Olympic, same builder, same sort of design, inspiration, and but with lots of windows with 30-mile views.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's probably the best thing I've done now is build that studio. It's been such an amazing asset for me. And I've made so many albums that have been mind-blowing and saved a lot of money from booking other people's studios, you know.
Good stuff. Do you believe in the concept of the muse?
Absolutely. I'm totally into Robert Graves' Triple Goddess thing, you know.
Oh, cool. So you kind of, because one of my things is when I'm writing is trying to get out of the way a bit and just sort of get into that state between, you know, kind of meditative really, or get in a flow state where I might be doing something else and sort of just listen to what's going on. And it's fascinating to hear how the muse or people's concepts of that. So is it kind of just a let it flow thing for you, or do you kind of wait and hear something exact that comes into your head? Or
no. For me, the muse is a 24/7 gig. That's the main job.
Cool.
Being inspired and finding the muse. Person or place or book or painting or some poetry. The muse is out there, but again, you might have to go to some challenging places to find it, and it's not straightforward, you know. But it's essential. I mean, I think it's great having muses and being inspired, and you have to be to inspire others. And you have to, embrace a full spectrum of wisdom and knowledge to really do that properly, I think. And but it's harder for the other people in your lives, your partners and your friends and your family. I mean, they're they're on the train or along for the ride, but they're looking out the window at the pile of destruction you're leaving in your wake, and all you're doing is looking forwards, and I'm going, we're going here. And that's tough for others, but for the artist, or for me as a producer, it's truly living your life fully.
Full commitment. It's what you have to do.
I
love that. What advice would you give songwriters, particularly? Because obviously you've been talking about production quite a bit, but you've written and produced and worked with some of the biggest songwriters of all time. What advice would you give a songwriter? What do they need to think about, or any kind of general advice or tips? What would you say?
It's interesting because you think, like, a lot of people who ask me for, what I'm doing and advice, they, I often say, like, the Oscar Wilde, all advice is bad, But at the same time, I mean, I think they're guidelines. I think you have to be inspired. So you've got to be inspired to be able to write a song, whether it's coming from despair and pain, or whether it's coming from joy and happiness. You have to be able to tell that story with your truth, authentically, for it to work. And you have to be inspired. So you have to live your life. You have to have lovers. You have to have your heart broken many times. You have to go and do crazy things, climb mountains, live in other countries, do things you'd never think you'd do when you were a kid, and do them with passion and 100%. And then you'll find your inspiration, You won't get that from sitting at home watching Netflix, that's how you accumulate your wisdom, by living a full life. Again, that's great for you when you're in the flow of that. It's tough for everyone else sometimes. But ultimately, the price you pay for that is a huge sacrifice of family, freedom, things people take for granted you won't have. And what you get from that is beautiful art. And really what you have to develop is a team of friends and family and lovers that support that, regardless of them being negated by it sometimes. They get what you're doing, and they're happy to support you and encourage you to get there for you.
That's very good.
That's rare to find, but when you find them, they often stay friends for life, so it's worth it. But I've always been like, if you can't handle it, see you later. That's who I am. That's where I'm at. That's what I'm doing.
I think it's really important to know that about yourself. If this is what you do with your life, if art, songwriting, music is your thing, and it's the only thing you can do, it's best to be fair with people, isn't it? Straight up and say, this is who I am. And
you can be honest. I mean, you can be honest with compassion as well. You don't have to be you know, there's ways of doing it. So, but it's still, the reality is there. I mean, but then in between all of that exciting stuff, there's the boring stuff, and that's being able to be on your own, be able to meditate, to reboot the mind and all the crazy stuff going through it, recalibrate to your intentions and sense of purpose and meaning for what you're doing. And that's quite a lot of work as well. Stay fit, that's really important. If you don't do that, you won't be inspired either. You'll be pulled down into the mud. Is
meditation a big thing for you?
Meditation is a big thing. Yeah, you've got to control your ego.
Yeah,
because your ego, you've got to annihilate the false ego, as they say in Tibetan Buddhism, and you have to, again, calibrate your intuitions and intentions towards what's important, which is inspiring other people and making beautiful art. And you have to curtail your ego enough to be able to do that, and also work with the people and be the leader. And being the leader is lonely. You're out front, everyone else is behind. Be able to do all that, you have to be balanced. And the only way I found to be able to do that is getting fit and meditation and stuff like that, going in.
Yeah.
Much as you're going to go out into the world and live your life, you have to reciprocally go in and deal with your shadows and the shamanic practices are good at balancing that out, I think. But yeah, you got to do that. Otherwise, you'll be too fucked up to be useful to anyone.
Love that, and I agree completely. Just off the top of your head, songwriters, who would be like your top three if you could? I know it's a bit of a silly question, but who are the top three songwriters that have impacted you?
Okay, well, you're gonna have Lennon McCartney at the top there. Probably Leonard Cohen next, but then Dylan.
Yeah, cool.
Then maybe Neil Young.
Yeah,
but maybe more other writers, Richard Ashcroft, people I've worked with, Neil Finn. I mean, these guys make, write words and music that make people cry and make me cry. That's really powerful. But I mean, who are the other great writers? I mean, I quite like the Baccarat era, 60s stuff, Scott Walker, all that as well. They're great writers.
The song Big Louise by Scott Walker, that's my favorite song of his. It's great.
Right.
It's well worth checking out. But do you reckon there's, with the songwriters you've worked with, some of the greats there, do you reckon there's like a common sort of characteristic or a common sort of vibe? I mean, they're all different people, but do you think there's a following link?
There's a commitment to the work. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you one final question, if that's okay, mate. And thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
So I ask everybody this, and it will change from day to day. But if you could have written any song or produced any record that you didn't write and didn't produce, what song would you have liked to have written, or what album would you have liked to have been involved with producing?
Oh, I'm going to take two off the top of my head here.
Okay,
so one of the two, both of these have got great lyrical, just one line in the song that just floors me every time I hear it. So the first one's a pop record. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
That's a great song.
I forget the name of the artist, but some Swedish pop thing. That is just pop genius, I think. What is love? Baby, please don't hurt me. That's it.
Yeah.
And then the other ones, I'm not sure who wrote this, but it's Total Eclipse of the Heart. Once upon a time I was falling in love, now I'm only falling apart. Love that. I mean, they're kind of silly ones, but I love them.
Yeah, but they're big.
I mean, if you're going to go deeper, I'll go into Fred Neil, Dolphins, Leonard Cohen, I mean, Dylan. Any of those artists, Hendrix, I would have, literally cut off a finger or an arm to do that. Maybe not an arm, but I would made a huge sacrifice to work with those cats. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to hearing whatever you're coming up with next, because it's always, when your name's attached to it, there's a level of quality and creativity which can be relied upon. So thank you for your creativity and thank you for your time.
Thanks, my pleasure.